welcome to the Section 1904 podcast, also on Marty Time TV. This is brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort. I am Darren Smith, and we are recording just a little bit more than 24 hours away from the start of the 2026 World Cup, which is hard to believe. It is here, it is happening, and it is going to occupy a lot of space on this podcast over the next 39, 40 days. So we know other people have some Padre questions. We have Friar territory for you. You can listen to all of the baseball dialogue over there, but there's going to be a lot of World Cup here since it is starting and it is surrounding us. And of course, I've been talking a little bit about our friends at SDFC. We're going to be partnering up with Fit Social in Mission Beach and South Mission Beach. So stay tuned for some of the details on that. But I do want to jump into the World Cup, and I do want to talk a lot about the U.S. men's national team because I know he covers it. And he covers Major League Soccer and USL and everything else that's happening in the United States of America as it relates to soccer. He is Joe Lowery, our friend from Backheeled.com and the Total Soccer Show, joining us yet again on the Section 1904 podcast. Joe, thank you. I know you are busy. We are all busy. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Oh, Darren, I always love coming on. Love chatting with you. Excited to be here.
Well, appreciate it. Let's start with Backheeled.com. What is your guys' plan? You're a fan. You were just telling me you're going to go watch the U.S. in its opener against Paraguay. You're going as a fan, but what is the plan for Backheeled.com? There's a ton. I love the piece that you have up there most recently, how to sound smart about the U.S. men's national team when you're in a casual conversation. Tell us what the plan is over the next 40 days.
Yeah, that is sort of a nice thesis for what the coverage is going to be. At Backheeled, we've always tried to do something different, right? I know that there are so many quality outlets and great people, our peers in this space, providing excellent coverage of the USMNT and of the World Cup. We're not trying to just duplicate what everybody else is doing, right? Number one, I don't think that's a sound business strategy. And number two, I'm just not interested in that, right? What we are trying to do is give people different looks at the national team and what that's going to look like. I actually will be at that game covering it in the press box on Friday, along with Sanjay Sujanta Kumar. So we'll have two folks on the ground covering the national team this summer, which is not something we've ever done before. We did it for Copa America, but have not done it for a World Cup. So new territory there. We're going to be trying to dig through things that other outlets maybe aren't going to talk about, whether that's the tactical nuances of how Mauricio Pochettino is setting up, probing for some quotes on that sort of thing, or whatever other stories we can find along the way. Then we're also going to have coverage of the on-field stuff, and that is, I think, been Backheeled's bread and butter. I imagine if people have listened to me guesting here before, they've kind of gotten a little bit of that sense. But we had Ben Wright, who does great work covering the national team as well as MLS for us at Backheeled. He recently put together a piece actually assessing how Pochettino's team plays, because it does seem like that has maybe confused both fans and pundits alike. And so we sort of set the record straight on that. We're going to have that sort of coverage as well. And then also some off-the-wall stuff from Adam Snavely, who was a Backheeled original, formerly at The Athletic, writes for ESPN and sort of graduated from Backheeled. And now we've got him back, and I'm really excited about that too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it is a balance too, right? Because, Joe, you and I were talking again about some of the opportunities that we have. I've seen you on Fox Local, where it is that you live, and I'm doing some stuff with Fox Local here in San Diego. The balance of, we are in a much different place than we were in 1994, the last time that the United States hosted this World Cup. But, you also know that you're bringing in a ton of people into the conversation as well. How do you approach it? I think you guys do such a great job in not dumbing it down, but also making sure that people who are casual, who are dipping in to find out like how they can, like you said, sound smart about the U.S. men's national team. How do you find that balance of not dumbing it down for the diehards, but also making sure that everybody has a seat at the table in this conversation?
Yeah, I think one thing that guides a lot of the coverage that we do at Backheeled is that principle of if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough, right? And I don't honestly think there is a choice that you have to make of who are you catering to? Are you catering to the diehards or to the newcomers, right? I think you can do both. And I think you do both by understanding what you're talking about really well. Like if you cannot explain whatever this tactical concept is in relative simple terms, then you probably don't understand it well enough, maybe even to be writing about it, right? And I'm speaking to myself here in a lot of ways. There's so many things that I want to learn more about. But I think that is the answer, is if you understand something really, really well and thoroughly and you are an expert in it, and that's what we strive to be, then you should be able to do both of those things at the same time. So that is very much the goal for this summer, and I'm really, really excited about it.
You guys also are going to be in our neck of the woods. So for anybody that's listening to this in San Diego, and the benefit of doing podcasts and being up on YouTube is people can watch this literally anywhere in the world. And I know we do have quite a few people who do consume our content from outside of the San Diego County borders, which is good. But you also are involved with the Total Soccer Show. I'm going to try to share the screen here, so bear with me. That you guys are going to be in Los Angeles. Can we talk a little bit about what this is going to look like for what this is? This is Thursday night, the night before the U.S. men's national team plays against Paraguay.
That's right. We've got TSS World Cup live. Man, first of all, checks in the mail, Darren, for all this promo.
How about that?
We will be in Los Angeles at the Lowery Theater. You can see all the details. There you go on the screen. June 11th, 8 p.m. We're stoked. We did a live show with TSS in New York for the last World Cup, and it was truly so much fun, both the show itself and then also getting to hang out with listeners and folks who would come to the show afterwards. Absolute blast. We've got some fun folks lined up to be with us at this show as well. We've got Paul Tenorio of The Athletic, Tom Bogert as well of The Athletic, Christian Polanco, the Cooligans, and then the TSS foursome. We're stoked, man. All the details are there on the screen, but we can't wait.
All right. Well, that's a good crew right there. So,
yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean that's like those are some heavyweights in the business as well. I mean Tom is like appearance guy. He's got a lot of appearances there. I've had him on quite a few times. So that should be a lot of fun. Anybody that's interested, again, we'll put up the this team. How are you feeling overarching as we get into this tournament now, specifically with the U.S.? Second time, as people probably know, hosting the World Cup, 1994, I mean, just like a completely different era for what the sport represents in this country. But what stands out to you as we're literally hours away from kickoff here in the U.S.?
I'll admit to feeling some cautious optimism, which is not usually where I sit with the national team. I think typically I tend to be pretty even-keeled and recognize, hey, that there's still a big talent gap between the U.S. and the best teams at this tournament. And I still believe that, of course. I think you'd be foolish not to, right? But I will say I was impressed with how the U.S. played against Senegal in their first World Cup tune-up and against Germany in the second. I really was. I think the U.S. went toe-to-toe with Germany and was even the better team for roughly 50% or so of that game. That does give me a little bit of optimism for when the U.S. or if the U.S. ends up going and facing a team that is a reasonable contender. I think you could put Germany into that bucket. Certainly not a favorite, but a team that I don't think anybody would be surprised if they won at all. I would still be absolutely floored if the U.S., say, did more than make the quarterfinals, and I still don't expect them to do more than that. I have them finishing in the round of 16 this summer, and that kind of feels like the sweet spot yet again for this team. But I will say, it does seem like the Pochettino plane is landing sort of with all of its necessary landing gear at the right time, at the right runway, and all those sorts of things. And there wasn't always a lot of clarity that we were going to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. What sort of opportunity do you see this? Because I do want to go a little deeper into some of the games and matchups and things like that. But just in terms of the opportunity, right? Again, I keep talking about 94. This is the inception of Major League Soccer in 96, right? These two things went hand in glove. Just in terms of what you think this might mean for the sport and how much of like the sport's potential growth, right? Taking this next step. Since you and I love this and we would love to see it become much more of the mainstream conversation, whether that's realistic or not. But the opportunity that the U.S. men's national team has to potentially and like literally change discourse about this sport in the country. What do you make of that?
I think it's a big opportunity. What I will say is I think anything that the USMNT does on the field will not, outside of winning the World Cup, frankly, or maybe making the final, I don't think there will be any sort of revolution as a direct response to them. What I do think could happen is that the World Cup has this pretty serious impact in a different way, though, from 94. I think in 94, you had the impact at the top of the game, right? You had the explosion of professional soccer, and that obviously was rocky for another decade or so, even more than that, after MLS had launched in 96. It had actually folded MLS over the phone. All the owners decided that, hey, we're done. And then eventually they get rallied back together and have to undo some paperwork. Like things were dicey for a while after 96 and 94. But what it seems to me that the impact of this World Cup could be is in the grassroots area, right? I think U.S. Soccer has done, to their credit, some really good work on trying to invest already. I mean, think about this. This is a different era of U.S. soccer as an organization, right? Forget soccer in the U.S. They have started to spend big and go out and look to make big moves, not just with the senior national team, but also with the National Training Center in Atlanta, and also now trying to make coaching more accessible, trying to make more playing services for kids to play this sport. And I think that's the impact of the World Cup that we're already seeing, is Algeria showing up in Lawrence, Kansas, right? And all of a sudden everybody is like stoked about Algeria. It's the Lawrence, Kansases. It's the, out here in my neck of the woods in Mesa, Arizona, we've got Turkey training down here. Like it's those kinds of moments and attachments to the sport that might always not be through the U.S. national team, but could still be through other national teams and could still create people interested in this sport in a way that they weren't before. I think U.S. soccer is setting up and trying to set up to have the impact of this World Cup be at the opposite end of where the 94 World Cup was. If that was at the top, this is going to be at the bottom. And I think that's what's needed, right? If you talk about, well, why can't we develop great men's soccer players? The culture isn't there, right? It's there in pockets. Of course it is. But it's not there in any sort of broader sense. And I think that is the impact that this World Cup could have on the United States.
When I get asked about how to define success for the men's national team, I know what I'm being asked. I'm being asked about how far they can go in the tournament. And, generally speaking, I'm probably with you about the quarterfinals. Maybe you go on one of these magic carpet rides. Everybody wants to channel South Korea from 2002, right, and go to the semis as one of the host nations. And if you're not going to dare to dream, even if you're a glass half empty, if you're not going to dare to dream now, then when are you going to? So I'm all for that line of thought. But the thing I always say, Joe, and I'm not trying to be difficult about the answer is yeah, of course it's going to be tied to results. But let's think even about 2022. Like for most people, if you would ask, what was the moment of 2022? They'd be like, well, I don't know. There was that thing against Wales, and that was 1-1, and then there was that scoreless draw against England, and I think Pulisic may have done something against Iran, and then then they get the pants. Like moments for me, like creating some moments, some real indelible moments for the U.S. men's national team. I understand that probably goes part and parcel with success in winning games, right? But from that standpoint, what can they do to really capture the imagination, to capture the attention span?
Yeah.
Can they There's only been 2 players that have ever scored in a World Cup, U.S. players, Eric Winalda, Ernie Stewart from '94. So who can create a moment like that people are going to be buzzing about and talking about in the next generation, that somebody's going to point to that and go, I remember where I was when fill in the blank happened in fill in the blank city against whatever the opponent, and that changed my world, right? I wonder if I know they're capable of creating those kind of things, but for me, success isn't just limited. Now, obviously you can't bow out of the group stage, but success isn't just limited to the results. It's a huge part of it, right? But it's also, what can they do to grab the attention of the people who are waiting, who are hoping for something like that to happen? Does that make any sense?
It does. I think it's a really great point. The hard thing there is they're so unpredictable, right? Those moments are so ethereal, right? I mean, can you expect another Anthony Robinson howitzer? I mean, maybe not, right? Would everybody like to see that? Of course. If the U.S. had a Lamine Yamal or a Messi or whatever it is, right? You could probably bank on a couple of those moments this summer, but they don't, right? And so I think I totally agree with your point. A moment or two like that would go a long way, and maybe even further than, say, a quarterfinal versus a round of 16 or whatever it is, right? They matter a lot. I 100% agree with you on that, Darren. The thing that I think this team can do to try to maximize their opportunities for those moments is play really good ball. And that is the thing that left me encouraged coming out of these 2 friendlies. And even, frankly, a lot of people were quite down on the U.S. after they lost to Belgium and to Portugal, and I can understand why. In the March window, the Belgium scoreline got away from the U.S. in a real way, and they didn't end up really, really contending in the Portugal game. I will say, in the first half of both of those games, before a number of changes in the second half, I thought the U.S. looked pretty darn good in those games. They had the lead, if memory serves, against Belgium, right? There were good moments in those games. There were even more good moments against Senegal and Germany. And the thing that most encouraged me about these most recent games is that the attack looked dangerous in a way that I don't remember it seeing look dangerous. You had, especially against Germany, you had Malik Tillman playing deeper in midfield, and he's somebody who's more of a 10 than he is a 6. So he brings a little bit more attacking creativity to this team. And the rotations off the ball looked effective, and Dest on the right wing looked inspired. Pulisic looks like he's at his best right now, which is a nice change for him after the season that he had at Milan to close out the year, really. It's those things fitting and firing together that gives you the best chance at those kinds of moments that you're talking about. And it does seem like the U.S. maybe, just maybe, I mean, the group stage will be a different kind of test because they're different kinds of teams, but maybe they are finding a little bit of the form that they need to maximize their chance of finding those kinds of moments.
What role do you think the home crowd's going to play, right? As an example, Mexico's getting set, and I know it's weird because it's 3 different countries, but Mexico's getting set to open up its 3rd World Cup on home soil, 1970, 1986. By the way, those 2 seasons, those 2 cycles, those are the best results that Mexico's ever had, going to the quarterfinals. So clearly they were buoyed by the home support. Again, I know 94 is a million years ago, but what role do you think, if any, the crowd plays? It's always a story with the U.S. men's national team, right? That it is a little bit different here when they're facing some of these other national teams, But, home soil matters.
Yeah.
And we just talked a little bit about South Korea. What role do you think home support will mean starting in Los Angeles, then up to Seattle, which is always really one of the great cities that we have, back in LA, and then afterwards, who knows where they're going to go? Maybe Santa Clara, maybe Texas. We'll see. But what role, do you think, playing on home soil will actually mean to this national team?
I think it will mean something to the players. And Christian Pulisic talked in pretty glowing terms, which is not normal for him. He's not usually that kind of personality. He is pretty even-keeled, and maybe even less than that, right? He talked in pretty glowing terms about the crowd in Seattle. In Charlotte for that U.S.-Senegal game at Bank of America Stadium. He seemed thrilled with the crowd, and he's criticized the poor atmospheres before for the U.S., right? So I think it matters to the U.S.'s best player. I think it probably matters to other players in that locker room as well. There's a sense of comfort that you can't get no matter how well you try to cultivate a hotel experience in Qatar that these players are going to have. And I'd imagine that is a bit of an edge. Now, I don't really have a great sense of what these crowds are going to look like, to be honest.
Sure.
I would imagine they're going to be pretty heavily pro-U.S. for these games, but I don't really know. But history tells us, and I think the players' comments on these things tells us, it matters to them. Whether that means it gets them a whole round further in the tournament, well, I'm a bit skeptical of that, right? But could it provide some sort of intangible boost? Absolutely, it could.
Yeah, and again, that's this is a turning point. It is a potential pivot point for a team that, for myriad reasons that Joe and I could spend the next 2 hours talking about, hasn't had the kind of home support that we see in other places. Let's talk in specifics about the group. It's an interesting group that the U.S. drew, and I'm sure that you've covered this at Backheel, Joe. Paraguay, Australia, Turkey. Do we go with Turkey or Turkey?
I don't know really which is the right way to go. I think maybe both are okay.
Okay, I'm with you. My whole life it's been Turkey, and I think over the last year, English language TV has started calling it Turkey. But it's interesting in the sense that these are teams that the U.S. faced not too long ago in 2025. That's an interesting pull. The U.S. beat Paraguay 2-1, beat Australia 2-1, lost to Turkey 2-1. And some of these players that are part of this squad, the 26-man roster for the U.S., 13 newcomers, 13 guys that played in the World Cup in 2022. Matt Freese, presumably the starting goalkeeper, played in goal for all three of those games against these three teams. What do you make of the group, and what role do you think, if any, the matches in 2025 serve for both sides, really?
I think for the U.S., it should inspire some confidence, right? And it is wild that that's how the group played out for the U.S. I don't think we can attribute that to any sort of stroke of genius on the scheduling front. I think that's just kind of how this came together, which is awesome. I think you see wins with at the time, even though rosters are different from the World Cup roster is different from the Paraguay roster or the Australia roster. There's still a lot of overlap, like you mentioned, not just Matt Freese, other players too. You get results in those games, and you're the better team in those games. That should give you confidence that you can do it again, and you're playing, I think, better soccer than you were at those times right now. So there should be plenty of confidence from that. And the Turkey result, that was a pre-Gold Cup friendly with basically not at all a World Cup roster for the U.S. And Turkey was much closer to first choice in those games. And the U.S. didn't get played off the field by any stretch of the imagination, right? I think they were very much in those games. I think that should totally give the U.S. some real confidence boost heading into this tournament. Now, the matchups are going to be tricky for the U.S. in some ways, right? Because we know that this U.S. team does not have the quality, or at least they haven't shown it consistently, to go out and break down teams that want them to have the ball, right? Paraguay is going to want the U.S. to have the ball. Australia is going to want the U.S. to have the ball. Turkey may be a little more open, but not dramatically so. Can the U.S. create those kinds of chances? Because the impetus is going to be on them to go out there and take the game by the scruff of the neck and actually make something happen. I'm warmer on this team's ability to do that coming out of these couple of friendlies and also out of the March window than I have been in quite some time. But let's not get it twisted. It's still going to be a huge challenge. So whatever confidence that those results against these teams gives this team, that's going to be real, but it doesn't change the fact that the games are going to have to be 100% focus and intensity from the U.S. to get the job done, because it's going to be a challenge.
How do you rate the degree of difficulty with this group, right? I mean, there are more difficult groups out there that you and I could rattle off the top of our head. It is not the group of death, but it is not an automatic pass either. So, degree of difficulty. I mean, how do you see it? Like you said, different styles. I think the first two may be a little bit similar, and then the third one will be totally different again. Paraguay, Australia, and Turkey.
Yeah, I think Opta had their rating systems for these groups and had the U.S. as Group D as the fifth hardest group overall. And I think that probably jives, right? There is no Giants because the U.S. is the pot one team as the host here. So there is no Spain, no Germany, no Brazil. Right? That team's not here. But also because the U.S. is a CONCACAF team and you can't have two CONCACAF teams in the same group, you don't get a Curacao or a Haiti in your group, right? And so the bottom of the group, the floor is high and the ceiling is low. And so what that means is I don't think there's any gimme games here. To think about if you're in a more regular group in the U.S., to say a pot 2 or pot 3 team, there's a game that you're very much expecting to bang 3 points in. Then you just need 1 point probably from the other 2 games. That's not really the calculation this time around. So it's just a super weird group. It's a group that I think the U.S. is going to have to take seriously, and they will because they know they're not above this sort of thing. But it's also not a group that really, really, truly terrifies you deep down. So it's a very weird kind of upper middle of the road sort of group, and I'm really curious to see how the U.S. is going to navigate it.
Yeah, Paraguay, correct me here. They are from South America, CONMEBOL. So they allowed the fewest goals, I want to say, of all the South American qualified teams in qualifying, right? I think they allowed the fewest goals of anybody from South America during qualifying, but they didn't score any goals either. So, like, they have a very unique style where they're pretty much just going to try to close you down. And if they get an early lead, good luck. Like you said, you can have the ball, you can take all the shots, but they're a team that's pretty disciplined in that regard. So right out of the gate, you're going to be getting a little bit of a knuckleball, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's very much the story with Paraguay. They conceded the second fewest goals in qualifying and were tied for the lowest in actual goals scored by teams that are going to the World Cup from CONMEBOL. So they're stodgy, right? They're sort of the definition of stodgy. And that has not always been a recipe for success for the U.S. What I will say is I think Pochettino has pressed some of the right buttons to try to get this attack flowing more. The big story outside of the Diego Luna of it all, which I had a hard time getting really fussed about. The big story from the World Cup roster from Pochettino was the lack of true central midfielders, right? No Tanner Tessman, no Aiden Morris. It really was just sort of Tyler Adams and Christian Roldan and Sebastian Berhalter. And then Weston McKennie maybe dropping back deeper, or Malik Tillman maybe dropping back deeper. We didn't know. And Pochettino comes out and says, hey, a few days after the roster dropped, we are really thinking about using McKennie or Tillman deeper in midfield. And we think it's going to help us in build up. We think it's going to help us be able to access the final third more and create more chances. And lo and behold, against Germany, in the lineup that really did look like his World Cup lineup minus Chris Richards, to my eye, who's still working his way back from injury, it was Malik Tillman next to Tyler Adams in midfield. And so Pochettino is clearly aware of the challenges, right? He's forgotten more about soccer than I'll ever know, right? He knows what the contestants are going to be like in this group. He knows what the conditions of the game are going to be like. And so he has tried to infuse in his lineup that I truly do believe we're going to see against Paraguay more attacking creativity. And that's something that we haven't really seen him do throughout his tenure so far. It's something that Greg Berhalter was hesitant to do during his tenure. It was very much prioritizing, by the end of it anyway, athleticism and ground coverage in midfield with that McKennie, Adams, Musa midfield. That was what he was about, Greg Berhalter. And Pochettino has not really tilted the sliders all the way towards the attack so far in his tenure, but it seems like he's doing it now. And I think this moment is exactly the moment that they need to do it.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, about considering the group. Do you consider winning the group? Is that a massive priority for Mauricio Pochettino and for the U.S.? And we all know, I mean, the degree of difficulty, again, once you get into the knockout stages, it's such a weird tournament. I mean, because you look at the two roads, right? You look at the two pathways if you finish first or second. First is you're going to face some third place team from group boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And then if you're the runner-up, then it looks like a much different challenge. But do you think it's like, hey, balls to the wall, try to win this group? Do you think that's sort of the mindset here, deep down for them, that they're not that they're good enough to be looking ahead, Joe, but just that they're thinking, if we are going to have any sort of sustained success and unique success for the U.S. men's national team, it's probably in our best interest to come out of this group, Group D, on top.
I think so. I think that's absolutely the mindset of this U.S. team. And I think we could see that on the field recently for this group in those World Cup tune-ups. The defensive intensity and the aggression that they showed in winning the ball and in the press and in the counter press. To me, it looked like a team that was desperate, right? Like clawing to get results, clawing to show that they belong, and more than just belong, that they can have some real success in front of maybe their most critical audience, their own country, right? I think that is sort of the energy that this team showed in their World Cup tune-ups. I think they'll show the same thing in this group stage. Like, I don't think this team believes that they're above going out and having to compete in all these games. And we don't know exactly what the bracket permutations are going to look like, right? There are a lot of options that, for me, as someone who follows this stuff as closely as anybody, that is like the single biggest drawback of the 48-team World Cup style is how hard it is to chart the courses and how sort of obtuse that all is. I do think the U.S. will be scratching and clawing to top this group, right? I mean, especially with how many days are between these games, it's almost a full week between each of these games in the group stage for the U.S. It's not as if rotation is going to have to be a priority in the way that it seems like maybe it needed to be in the 2022 World Cup, which was condensed because it was in the winter. Now it's a little bit of a different story, and if Pochettino wants to use whatever he views as his best 11 for every game, especially early in the tournament, I think he's going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point too about the drawback of the 48 is you don't even know how other teams are going to approach this, right?
Right.
Some other teams might say, "Why are we going to put our foot on the pedal right out of the gate? This is a long tournament. We're playing in excessive heat, right? We're playing in humidity, and maybe we are going to rotate a little bit more. And if we pick up a point in group stage, well, who cares, right? Maybe we don't even win a game. Some teams aren't even going to win a game, and they're going to get out of their group, Joe. So." From that standpoint, I agree. It's tough to know what's waiting for you on the other side because it might be a really, really good opponent. It's not going to be perhaps some also-ran, but some team with some coach that's like, hey, all of our sports science people said we're not going to go burn out in the first couple of weeks of this tournament because we have more to play for once we get into the knockout stage. We might even be resting players. I mean, you just talked about Chris Richards, who I think we would agree is the best defensive player that the U.S. men's national team has. And there was some debate about even putting him on the roster. I was like, no, there is no debate.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need him against Paraguay. I would love to have him against Paraguay, but I need him for the tournament.
Yes.
If this team is going to be successful, I need him at some point. And if I have to wait till Australia or Turkey or even until the knockout round, he is a player that's worth waiting for. And I think there's probably a lot of other coaches that assembled their rosters thinking the same thing, right? Like even a team, a heavyweight like Brazil is probably thinking something similar about Neymar. Like, I don't need Neymar against Morocco, but I might need him somewhere down the road. So I think that's probably an approach that has existed in previous World Cups, but certainly you can understand it more with the 48-team World Cup, right?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And I love that you mentioned Richards there. I had the exact same perspective on that whole thing when it seemed like Pochettino was tipping his cards a little bit, that he wasn't sure what Richards' status was going to be because it seemed like U.S. Soccer thought he was a little further along than he was when he showed up from Crystal Palace after that ankle injury. But you can't send Chris Richards home, right? And that's not going to happen at this stage, right? He's back in training, and I think the full U.S. roster was able to train for the first time altogether fully on Tuesday, I believe that was. So this team is together. It seems like they are darn close to 100% healthy, which is huge. You just can't afford to leave Richards home, especially because I talked about how Poch is sliding the sliders, great English for me, towards the attack. That means that there's going to be more strain on the center backs. And I think we saw in both the Germany game and the Senegal game, for all the attacking benefits, there were some defensive trade-offs a little bit. And without Richards on the field, the back line is far more likely to get exposed. So you have to have him, whether it's for Paraguay or not. You got to have him in this roster. With 26 players, there were 4 outfield DNPs at the last World Cup for the U.S. You don't need everybody in that roster if you don't want them. And Pochettino can afford to give Richards a little bit of a breather early on. Maybe not for long, but at least enough to get him on the field to the point where you're comfortable he can survive a game or two. That has to be a priority for the U.S.
Seems like consensus is suggesting that it's going to be Matt Freese in goal. Now, Matt Turner was the starter in 2022, played all 4 games, saved 9 out of 12, I want to say off the top of my head, gave up the penalty kick to Wales. He didn't give it up, but one of them was a penalty kick is what I'm trying to say. Do you have any strong opinions about what Pot should do at goal?
Not really, to be honest.
Same.
I don't think there's been a lot separating Matt Turner and Matt Freese with the national team. I think Matt Turner has been in better form in MLS with the New England Revolution than Matt Freese has been with NYCFC. But really, when it comes to the U.S., Freese has been Potch's guy. He's been his most capped goalkeeper. And yeah, there's a little mistake in the Gold Cup, but then he also makes some big saves in the penalty shootout in the Gold Cup, right? I mean, you get both sides of that. I don't think it's a huge problem if Matt Freese is starting games, nor do I think it's a huge problem if it's Matt Turner. I think that Freese got the start, though, against Germany and acquitted himself well enough in that game. I think that means it's his job. If something has to change mid-tournament, I'm not going to be anxious about it, other than that if something changes, it probably means that something's gone horribly wrong for the U.S. and Matt Freese. But about the goalkeeper in a vacuum, don't really think Pochettino can go wrong, and I don't have any issue with the fact that it does seem like he's gone Matt Freese's way.
And for what it's worth, Freese did start all 3 of those games in 2025 against the 3 opponents in Group D. You were not concerned about Pulisic?
No. I wasn't concerned about Pulisic coming into these games. There was a lot of hubbub about the fact that he hadn't scored a goal for the national team since 2024, that he hadn't scored a goal with Milan in the calendar year of 2026. When I watched Pulisic play for the U.S. in the March window, I thought he looked really good. I thought he was very bright in those games, and even playing one of those games completely out of position in a move from Pochettino that didn't make any sense to me, using Pulisic as a false nine, but I guess he wanted to see it to really know in his heart that it couldn't work. I suppose I can get on board with that. But playing out of position for half of his minutes effectively in that window, he was still the brightest attacker on the field for the U.S. And coming into these games, Senegal and Germany scores against Senegal, and you could see the relief, but you could also see his quality. Like, he was the best U.S. player on the field in those games too. So I think Pulisic has shown up in the moment where it's really mattered. Didn't really have any doubts that he was going to do that because he was still getting into good spots and creating chances like nobody else in this U.S. roster. It does seem like, though, that he is maybe even going to be a level above where I thought he would be, at least based off of his performances in the last two games. And for the U.S. to do something unique, to use the word that you used earlier, like, they're going to need Pulisic playing at a level that we've barely seen before, and maybe they're going to get it.
Yeah, I don't want to say I was concerned. I don't think he was washed, but the form at Milan was the form.
Sure.
And I think even when he scored against Senegal, he let out a little bit of emotion.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Like there was something there that he's like, okay, and said afterwards, good, you guys can stop talking about it. Even though we all saw, Christian, how you celebrated that goal. What I worried about, Joe, is just, if you're Poch, do you need to have another idea there? Like, do you need to, if he shows up and he's in the form that, again, maybe, there was something going on, who knows? But if he showed up and he wasn't Christian Pulisic, Captain America, if he showed up and was, not productive, do you need to have another idea? Or do you go, hey, listen, we're just going to sink or swim with this guy? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I wondered if you're Pochettino. Do you owe it to the rest of the team to say, like, I don't know, like, maybe I need to, get Zendejas, go, or whatever it might be. Do you need to have a plan B, or is everything still going to run through Pulisic, sink or swim?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I didn't factor in, and sounds like the thing that separated our thinking on that, is for me, even Pulisic at 60% is preferable to a Brendan Aronson or a Zendejas in this team, with respect to those players who are both excellent players, right? I just don't think there was a version of the U.S. that didn't feature Pulisic. Even if Pulisic at his absolute worst as a professional soccer player, I still think he's got to be in the team for the U.S. Like, he still does things that nobody else does. So yes, it is still a good thing. We can all agree with this. It's a good thing that Pulisic seems to be in good form as of right now, as of a week or two ago. That's huge for this team, and they're going to need that. But even if that wasn't the case, I couldn't see a vision of this U.S. team trying to really win soccer games on home soil that didn't include Pulisic on the field for the lion's share of those minutes.
Player that has the most to gain from the U.S.
Oh, that's a great question. Player that has the most to gain for the U.S. at this World Cup, I'm going to say that it's Folarin Balogun. I think Balogun, coming off of the season with Monaco, as good as he was Monaco's player of the season, there are more rungs that he can climb in Europe, right? And if he shows something effective at this summer's tournament, and that's blended with his success in a completely different environment with Monaco, blended with his success at a completely different team lower down the table in Liga, I think that maybe moves the needle for Balogun and gets him to a place that he hasn't reached before for the World Cup. I'm only like 60% confident of that answer because I've never thought about that question before, so there probably is something better out there, but I'll stick with Balogun for now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fine answer. I also toss out there Gio Reyna. Like, what if Gio comes out here and balls out, and you and I are also...
That's a better pick.
Yeah, I'm like, well, yes, I put you on the spot. I had all night to think about that. But like, I'm with you. I'm a Gio guy, and I know people are done with it, and they haven't gotten over 2022, but in terms of just how special the talent is, and Poch obviously is on board with us in this.
Yeah.
Like what if he comes out and has a great tournament for the U.S.? Yeah. Like, I don't know where that leaves him with club. I don't know why it doesn't click on a regular basis for Gio, but man, he's a guy that could do a lot to repair his image for starters.
For sure.
Right? Because a lot of people still are continuing to hold against him what happened in 2022. But, where it goes from here for him with that talent, I mean, there's a lot there, but I don't know that there's a wrong answer to this question.
Yeah, I got one more as I was thinking about it more, and I pulled up the roster side in front of me. I think Gio's a great pick. Actually, looking through the roster, I feel better about my Balogun pick, but the only other one I'll add is Alex Freeman, who it seems like is the guy that Poch, I mean, he didn't unearth him, right? I mean, Freeman was playing like the best right back in MLS when he gets the call up by Pochettino. But he sort of is a Poch guy with the national team because he gave him the opportunity and has relied on him now seemingly as a starter heading into the biggest World Cup ever and the biggest tournament the U.S. has ever had on home soil. Freeman is going to be the guy, as it sounds like on the right side. I know that Dest is playing as a true winger. I'm a real Alex Freeman believer, and it seemed like Villarreal are as well because they were giving him starts towards the end of the season, and they didn't really wait to bet him into that team. I think Alex Freeman, my personal belief is that he still has another rung or two to climb on the European ladder, that he will do that. I don't think Villarreal is his final destination. I think he could be playing at a team challenging in a more serious way for a title in a major European league. I think maybe other teams are going to get a little bit more familiar with Alex Freeman and then watch him succeed next year with Villarreal in the Champions League. And in a year from now, we could be talking about him moving to, I don't know, Chelsea might be a bit much, maybe not though. Like that sort of team, that wouldn't shock me.
Obviously, for those that are listening to this, not watching this, I am wearing my SDFC quarter zip today. So take this question with a pinch of salt. But how much will the MLS guys get blamed whenever it is that the U.S. gets knocked out of this tournament?
In certain circles, they'll get all the blame, right? I think in all the rational circles. I mean, like there aren't going to be a lot of MLS guys playing minutes for the U.S. at this World Cup. That's my sense. Matt Freese, someone in goal will get all the minutes, right? Because they're all MLS entrants. Tim Ream will play, sounds like most, if not all the minutes along the back line. And then maybe somebody in central midfield, but maybe not, right? So maybe we get Sebastian Berhalter, maybe we get Roldan. Doesn't maybe seem like either one of those players is totally first choice from Poch, but I think there'll probably be a start in there for one of them at some point of this tournament. But really, the MLS influence is not going to be all that extreme. And even if it is, right, I think those players can acquit themselves well enough at this tournament. I think they've earned their spots on these rosters for various reasons. And it will just be the irrational folks amongst us who heap the blame on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Ream. I think Miles Robinson. We just saw FC Cincinnati right before the break, and the criticism's real there.
Yeah,
and it's not just fans of the U.S. who are anti-MLS players. I mean, Cincinnati fans are going through it with Miles Robinson as well. I know he's a great story, and there's a huge redemption opportunity for him. Got hurt right before 2022, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that. Chris Richards, keep your fingers crossed here that
we
see him sooner rather than later. I mean, I'd love to see him shut us all up, but yeah, I'm with you as well. And plus, I just think guys like Roldan, he's there for culture. He's there because the Seattle culture is a real thing in this country that people don't want to acknowledge, but it is a real thing what they're building in Seattle, and Christian Roldan has been right in the middle of that all. So it's important to have a guy like that around there. And if Sebastian Berhalter can set up a set piece somewhere down the road, then agree. You're asking for a couple of moments out of that guy. You're not asking him to be out there and play 90 minutes each and every one of these matches. We'll end on this note. Just overall, do you have any prediction for what you're expecting for the group? Is the U.S. going to win it? Finish second? What do you think?
I'll hedge and just say they're going to finish second behind Turkey. I wouldn't be surprised either way.
So that final game will mean something.
I think so. I mean, the outcome that would surprise me most is that the U.S. doesn't get out of the group. Like basically, you can just march your way up. I think fourth would shock me. Third would surprise me. First or second would feel about right. In one of those orders, you could basically flip a coin as far as I'm concerned. Turkey, I think the thing that tilts me in that direction, they're going to have the best couple of players on the field in that game. I mean, no matter how you slice it, Arguler would be the best USMNT player
he's
probably
Real
ever,
Madrid
right?
player.
Yeah, I mean, he's unbelievable. And then Yildiz at Juventus is brilliant, maybe about a Pulisic sort of level player. And then Hakan Çalhanoğlu would be a guaranteed starter for the U.S. in midfield, right? So Turkey will have the talent edge, at least at a couple of spots. How much that matters in a game like soccer, yeah, you can talk about that. But that tilts me a little bit that direction, along with just feeling more at home, looking at the glass a little bit empty,
All right, let me get greedy and put this up here one more time. Just for everybody, if you're going to be in Los Angeles, I know a lot of people from San Diego. We have a lot of viewers and listeners who are going to be around the World Cup at SoFi Stadium, the El Rey Theater. How can people find tickets? Is there a website for those that are listening? Yeah,
tssworldcup.com. If you're looking for tickets, we'd love to see you there.
All right. Here's Joe Lowery, backheeled.com. Again, if you want to sound smarter about this World Cup, then by all means, I would highly recommend, if you're an MLS fan or if you're a USL fan, if you're a fan of this sport anywhere in the United States, what have I done here? Stop sharing. Then by all means, you can check out backheeled.com. It has helped me immeasurably in my personal and professional life. Joe Lowery, we thank you very much for taking the time. As always, enjoy the World Cup, my man.
Darren, thank you so much. Always a joy to be on. Love chatting with you, and you enjoy the summer as well.